All of the reasons why I was celebrated in Italy were the reasons that people made fun of me in England.
She's an award-winning CEO, female empowerment expert, and ambassador for the NSPCC. She's the author of the best-selling book, The Smart Girls Handbook, which was noted as WHSmith's Book of the Month, Scarlett V. Clark.
I've toured in a few countries now. You know, in America, working with Harvard, I was invited to speak. And then afterwards, this mother approached me and she said to me, Scarlett, for the past 2 years, my daughter has told me every day she wants to take her own life. It's the first day she hasn't wanted to because of something you have said. Your why has to be really strong. It was my friend's book launch. A literary agent came up to me and she said, and when's the book being published? Meet me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And she signed me there and then.
Scarlett, welcome to the Inspired by Show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you've been able to come here, and I feel like we've been planning this for quite some time, but I'm glad that we are here.
Yeah.
And we were just talking off camera about how well we know each other outside of this sort of stuff, and it's actually nice to finally be having a chat on camera and getting you on the show. So obviously, I know you quite well, but I want our listeners and our viewers to really get to know you as well as I do.
Okay.
A big part of your story is founding Smart Girl Tribe, and I want to talk about that. But before we do, where did you think this sort of love or drive for entrepreneurship and really being a smart girl came from for you?
I think, to be honest, it probably came from my parents because both my mum and dad have their own businesses. So it probably came from them subconsciously. But outside of that, I've always strived to have freedom and almost control of my life. So I always knew from when I was quite young that I would end up working for myself. I'd only ever wanted to be an author. So I genuinely thought that's the road, that's what I'm going to be pursuing. So I couldn't say there was any experience in particular that made me want to be an entrepreneur. I desperately wanted to be a writer. I really wanted to go into journalism. And then I got to 19 years old and it was my first year at university. And I was applying to all of these summer internships and I was being accepted, but I didn't follow the same ethos or mission as them. And when I was being accepted, I called my mum and I was saying, I don't know how I can go and work for these big publications when I don't follow the same ethos as them. And that's how Smart Girl Tribe came about, because I genuinely said to my mum and to myself over and over, somebody's got to do something, somebody's got to change the system, and then realised I'm someone.
Wow. And you say you didn't align with the ethos. What was different?
I remember the week that I decided to set up Smart Girl Tribe, I had gone to Sainsbury's actually, and I was looking at the magazines and one headline was how to lose 7 pounds in 7 days. And that's always stood out for me, just how to lose weight. There was a big push, especially then, and those weren't the articles that I wanted to write. So when I set up Smart Girl Tribe, I really knew that we were onto something within maybe 3 days, because we had about 40 women from over the world asking if they could contribute to Smart Girl Tribe, because it started as an online magazine and we were just really offering women a platform to share their story in a very unedited, unfiltered way.
I love it. That's one thing I think I really align with you, is because similar to what you've just shared, a lot of what the media talk about is like weight loss, divorce, relationships, and it's all very, if I can say it as bluntly as this, low level. Like, to me, that's not going to help you really develop as an individual. Whereas Smart Girl Tribe is all about that, right? It's about, it's okay to be smart, and actually it's not, you don't have to hide your intelligence to get results. So you also mentioned there, which I kind of want to go back to, the fact that originally you didn't want to be an entrepreneur, it was more of an author. Where did your love for writing and this dream of becoming an author come from for you?
I can't actually remember a time when I didn't want to be an author. I started reading when I was really young. The first book my mum ever read to me was Jane Eyre. And the adult version as well, not a child's version. So I always wanted to pursue something to do with books in writing, and I was always writing stories when I was really young. I was writing a lot of poetry, and then as a teenager I started submitting works to like national poetry competitions and things, or story competitions, and winning some domestically and internationally. So that's when I really understood that I wanted to pursue writing. I wasn't too particular about the formats because then at university I started writing for the university's newspaper, and that's really when my love, I think, grew even more, and I understood that that was the path that I wanted to pursue. But I've also always had a love for language because I grew up in Italy.
Oh, wow.
So I learned Italian when I was really young, and then I attended a language school. So then I was also speaking Spanish and French and Russian from quite a young age. So that's probably where my love for language grew, I'd like to say, rather than, I don't think it started there. I think it was just a natural thing that came for me.
That's so inspiring. I mean, that's so many languages. You put me to shame. I'm engaged to a French person. I'm still not fluent in French. I'm trying. Maybe you can help me. So I think the good thing is, though, Scarlett, you kind of went on this journey and you're very transparent and honest about the journey that you've been on. Now, one of the things that we resonate with, and we've spoken before about, is this whole age thing. Because a lot of people I found when I started my business would be asking me questions about, oh, how old are you? And how did you do that at such a young age? And I used to feel that it took away some of the power of what I'd achieved. Did you find anything was happening when you started? Because you did start Smart Girl Tribe at quite a young age. How did you find it? Do you think it was a benefit to being younger? Did you ever struggle with that?
No, I don't think it was a benefit at all. I think it really hindered me in a way, because there's one thing, saying that you're going into business when you're young, but then when people know that you're a teenager. And also, I think there was a positive thing in a way because I was very naive. So I almost, it was full on just audacity and delusion, really. That's what I was working on. That's why I pursued Smart Girl Tribe, because again, it started as an online magazine and I was very young and I only thought that it would ever be a passion project. It was only when I graduated that I realized actually it could be a full-time business, but I never set it up to be a business. I very much just thought, I had 100 reasons to not pursue this. And especially at the time when I decided to launch it, I didn't have an internet connection. I was in rural Italy because I had gone back that summer after my first year at university. So we didn't have an internet connection. I didn't have a phone connection. And I actually emailed my entire contact list. I had to walk to a local Wi-Fi hotspot and I emailed my entire contact list asking, does somebody know somebody who maybe knows somebody else who can help me build and develop this website? So I would say the positive slant, if you like, is the fact that I was so naive. That was probably something that helped me, because how I started writing for Cosmopolitan afterwards was because I snuck into an event the editor of Cosmopolitan was hosting at the time. And I don't think I would possibly do that now. But back then, and I also, have snuck into Fashion Week events, and those aren't necessarily things that I would promote. I wouldn't say you have to go and do that. But being so young, there was a lot of hustle in me. There was a lot of drive. I had the audacity at the time. I don't know if I would have that same hustle and drive now. So in that way, it has helped me. But I would say meeting other people and them asking me how old I was and saying, okay, I'm, 19, I'm a teenager and I've set up this business, I wasn't taken seriously.
And isn't it interesting now how far you've come? And let's be honest, like, time is still moving for all of us in the same way, right? So you still might be younger than other people that are in the same seats, but isn't it amazing how it hasn't been a disadvantage for you?
It is. It is amazing. I think that, one piece of advice I would say to young entrepreneurs is just be yourself. Because at the time, everyone was telling me, Chloë, to be more like a man and to behave more like a guy and to be more aggressive. And I just remember saying at the time, being at university, living in halls, saying to my friend, I don't know how to be anyone but myself. So I couldn't be more aggressive. That wasn't how I wanted to run this passion project, which then became a business. I wanted to build a business that was based on my own values and compassion and empathy and really pushing the needle forward is what I would say. So it has been incredible. Sometimes I do have to look back and I do have to remember the hustle it took, the sacrifice it took, there were so many naysayers at the time. And, again, being so young, I didn't have the head that I do now. And, my best friend at the time said, Scarlett, seeing you do so much is making me feel as though I'm not doing enough. So I don't feel that we can be best friends anymore. That was heartbreaking, more so than a breakup with any boy. That was devastating because, again, all of my friends we were just teenagers.
Yeah, it's so different, isn't it? For I think people see individual successes and they either go one of two ways in my experience. It's like supportive and really like proud and I'm happy for you, or comparisonitis and jealousy. And it might not even be like, I want that. It might just be criticizing themselves and having that imposter syndrome that, I'm clearly not good enough.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I always struggled with, Scarlett, when I was really starting out, was we have enough of those limiting beliefs in our own minds, right? That when we hear them from other people, it almost like adds up and piles on top. And I don't know if you agree, but because I started quite young, I felt like I had the hustle, like you shared, but I didn't have the thick skin or the trust in myself at that stage. What was your experience of that?
I don't think I have the thick skin now. I didn't back then, and I don't think I do now. It was very difficult starting. I would say the hardest thing for me was the lack of support, particularly from my friends. And now I can see it for what it was. That must have been quite difficult because it had been my first year. And then I started being invited to Fashion Week. I was being interviewed by the press and things like this, and meeting some really cool people. We had some amazing collaborations. And then we were also a runner-up in the Mental Health Organisation Awards. So things like that, I can understand why maybe friends didn't support me as much as they would now. So I found it incredibly difficult. I would say having a thick skin, it is necessary if you're going to be in business, because you won't be liked by everybody. So I would say it is necessary. What you can do to help yourself, I would say you need to focus on, I don't really like the term, self-love, but you do have to care for yourself. You have to be aware, and you always have to remember that if somebody does say potentially something negative or hurtful deliberately that isn't true, it's just a reflection of them and where they currently are in time and space.
Yeah. And I think we all need to hear that nowadays, don't we? Because I think it's so easy to forget as well. It's so easy to take things personally, especially when things start going well, I find. So tell us a bit more about the journey. So obviously you started Smart Girl Tribe and it was an online magazine. So it's obviously more than an online magazine now. Yeah. So tell us about the journey of where you went next and what it's become.
So by the time I graduated, I would love, Chloe, to sit here and say that I didn't listen to everybody telling me that Smart Girl Tribe wouldn't amount to anything, but I did. And I had, friends, some family members, even professors, because I was doing very well at university and because I spoke multiple languages. I had professors talking to my parents and saying, we really think Scarlett should pursue a more maybe political path or work for the EU or something, which always makes me laugh because I wonder where I'd be now, #Brexit, if I had listened. So that was how it started. So when I graduated, I listened to everybody and I accepted a very prestigious position. I was working at a PR company. We were organising events. And then within 3 weeks, I was miserable. I had been given my first big project. So I was organising a huge event for Hollywood celebrities. They were flying in at a hotel in London. And I remember looking to my left and my boss was offering me more money and a promotion. And then I remember in front of me, there were lots of Hollywood celebrities coming through, and to my right you had the paparazzi. I remember thinking, I'm miserable. So I walked in the next day, so at that time it had been 3 weeks and a few hours, and I quit and I booked a one-way flight ticket to New York because that's where I truly felt Smart Girl Tribe was going to take off, and that it just grew from there. So 5 months post-graduation, we launched the podcast, which was top rated here and in Australia within its first 6 weeks. And then 5 months after that, I secured my book deal.
Wow. So now you look back and you think, Are you glad you left the job? Let's not assume.
I would say so. I would say so now.
It's like so much just lined up for you, you know, and let's be honest, you weren't sat there manifesting it, you know, sat there doing nothing going, this is going to work. Like, you put in the work. I mean, tell us about this one-way flight to New York.
So I didn't obviously have a job out there. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have an apartment. Just in my gut, that's where I truly felt I was going to find my tribe, my people. And that's where Smart Girl Tribe was going to start and really grow and be, you know, become what it has now. So I booked this one-way flight and went out there. I spent a few months there and was just working on Smart Girl Tribe, building Smart Girl Tribe. And then by the time I had come back, I was then pursuing the podcast and writing the book.
Wow. I just love how you say it so relaxed. You're like, yeah, I just booked a one-way flight and it was totally fine. It's like nothing could have fazed you.
I think, again, it comes down to being so young. I just think at the time, I thought, my parents have always said to me, you know, it's up to you if you want to make it happen. And I very much grew up that way. Nothing was given to me. So outside of my education, I would say, my schooling, nothing was handed to me. My parents always said, you're either going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. So whenever I would complain, they would say to me, what are you going to do about it? So I grew up launching, you know, in my school, being social chair, launching like this international organization to celebrate cultures from all over the world in the school. I was head of the charity committee. I was, you know, a member of the French Literature Club. I was doing so many different things. And I think a lot of that does come down to the values my parents instilled in me. And they would say to me, you know, you are going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. And they would often say, even now, whenever I complain about something, they say, well, what are you going to do about it then? So I think that by the time I graduated and I was miserable working in this job, and it is a fantastic company still, but I remember thinking, okay, if Smart Girl Tribe's going to make it, now is the time. And it did come down to an unwavering belief in myself.
Did that belief ever get shaken, or did you ever question it and actually think, is this the right thing?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I think I've never had any doubts when it has come to Smart Girl Tribe because of the women I have met on my journey and the impact I've been able to have since. So being a female empowerment expert for Harvard, being a UK delegate for UN Women, working with the United Nations. So I think because of that, I've never had any doubts when it has come down to the impact that Smart Girl Tribe could have or everything it could be. I started again with 100 reasons telling me not to do this. I didn't have any business experience. I didn't have an economics degree. I had no evidence suggesting I'd be remotely competent at setting up and pursuing business, but I did, and here I am today. So I would say to anyone, if I can do it, you absolutely can. And it doesn't mean that it's easy. And it doesn't mean that there isn't sacrifice and hard work, and you absolutely need a very strong support system around you. But I do believe that with enough faith and belief in yourself and enough hustle, you can absolutely make any dream come true.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you mentioned the support system there. I've seen that be the biggest thing that makes or breaks a lot of entrepreneurs, whether they're business owners that want to grow a 7-figure business, or they just want to build a brand that then they become a speaker and a podcaster. If we don't have a good support network around us, I mean, I like to define them as wobbles rather than breakdowns because it feels a little bit better. But I find we all have wobbles, we all have struggles, but usually it's remembering the good things and actually focusing on those that help, and those people can help with that. I know a huge part of your support system is also your team around, because that's one of the things that we've always talked about. So I'd love to talk about your team and actually, more importantly, your book deal.
Now, if you've been watching this episode and there's any part of you that's thinking, do you know what, I would love to learn how to write a book, but I just don't know where to start. Maybe you're thinking, Chloe, I've got loads of ideas, but I feel like I need to plan it out and know what goes in my book where. Then I've got a little gift for you. I created a book writing planner that we've used for all of our books that we've published. And usually it was only for our clients that we publish with, because if I can help them write their book, then they're more likely to publish with us. Now, however, what I found was loads of people struggle with this before they even start to work with publishers. So what I've decided to do, and I've agreed it with the team, that I can give you this planner for free, okay? All you've got to do is enter your name and email into our system, and the team will actually send you out the planner. Now, the planner is like a PDF document that you can fill in your details. This goes through and helps you get your ideas for your book. It works out who your book's for, helps you plan the structure of your book, the content of your book, and how you're going to actually launch it. So it helps you take your book from start to finish, all in a very simple planner. So if there's any part of you that wants to write your book and you get really overwhelmed or you don't know what to put in it and where, then the planner is for you. As I said, just pop your name and details into the planner and it will get sent straight to your inbox and you can go from there.
That came about from that, because I know obviously your agent and your publisher is a huge part of your team now.
Yeah, no, so I, again, always knew I wanted to be an author. I didn't think it was going to happen so quickly, genuinely, because at the time I had set up Smart Girl Tribe. It was an online magazine. I loved writing for it and contributing to it. And then over time, I realized more and more that I was more proofreading and editing, and I really missed writing. How my book deal came about, and this is why I do think you have to have enough hustle, because it does get to the point, and I truly believe this, that people start coming to you and what's meant for you will find you. Because I was invited to attend, it was my friend's book launch at the time. Well, now she's my friend. I didn't know her at the time, but she invited me at the time. I attended, and then a literary agent came up to me and she said, so, Scarlett, tell me about you. What do you do? So I explained who I was, and she said, and when's the book being published? I said, I don't know. And she said, meet me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So I did, and she signed me there and then. So that's how my book deal came about. I wasn't expecting it to happen that way. I didn't go to this book launch thinking that was even a possibility. I do think, though, if you put in the work, then things do come back to you, and what you put out, you then attract to you, if you like. So yeah, what's meant for you will find you.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. Now, you talk about the book. Obviously, it's a fantastic book, Smart Girls Handbook. I absolutely love it. Did you always know what the book was going to be, or was there ever a point where you're like, well, I've got this book deal, what book am I going to write?
I knew that it was going to be about my journey, and it was going to be part memoir, because I had gone through so much in the lead up to launching Smart Girl Tribe, and then the journey in between starting it and securing the book deal. So I knew it would follow my journey, and I knew that it was going to be advice. One thing that I was doing was I was a speaker, so I was speaking in a lot of schools at the time and at universities and in different businesses. And I started noticing that at every event that I was invited to, there would be queues of women for hours just waiting afterwards to ask me one question. So I thought, okay, they need something tangible to walk away with, because I'm giving them an answer to this question, but I'm not going to be there tomorrow. I'm not going to be there next week. I'm not going to be there next year. They need something tangible that they can pick up and turn to. And that's when I then secured the book deal. That's what I remembered. So I went home and I wrote a list of the most common themes and topics I was asked about, and then also the most personal, vulnerable stories of mine that I never wanted to share with anyone. And I put it all in the book.
Oh, I love it. It's the perfect balance, though. It's what I say, obviously, as a publisher, I always say to people, you don't want to only have a memoir. You don't want to only have like a self-help or how-to book advice. You want to blend the two, because that's what helps people learn and also relate to you as well. Was there ever a part where you were writing, think, oh my God, I can't put that in there. That's too raw, or that's too personal?
Everything. Everything. There was so much in it. I find it quite easy now to talk about business. And even when I was writing it, the business side of things, my entrepreneurial journey, but there were a lot of personal things in there. And it took me 4 months to write. I was writing every day. And I remember at the time thinking, because it was just me and in my, kitchen or in my lounge writing, it came to me very, very naturally and very organically. It was only afterwards where I thought, oh my gosh, I really open up. And I've noticed that when people have read the book now and when they come up to me and the types of things that they say, it makes me realize actually how personal the book is.
Yeah. And that's what people will remember it for. And that's why people will recommend it, because they really get to know Scarlett in there.
They do.
Yeah, they do indeed. What was the best advice you were given when you come to writing your book or publishing your book? Do you remember?
I think that I can't remember there being one piece of advice, because I loved writing it. I still love writing now. I'm always writing. So I can't remember at the time if anyone gave me any specific piece of advice. It's quite generic advice, but my mum has always told me to be myself. And I think that was exceptionally important when I was writing the book, and even from the cover, the topics I talk about, how it has been promoted since. But it goes back to when I started Smart Girl Tribe, it was very difficult because being 19, and I was a very compassionate child, and I don't think I was ever really cool, Chloe, so I was in Italy, and then I came back to sit A-levels because I wanted to go to a British university. And coming from Italy, I was attending a private language school. It looks like Hogwarts. There were 12 students in my year. And, things such as, there wasn't a drinking age at the time. So I had always been exposed and I had always been around alcohol. And because of that, from a young age, that I never felt the need, and my friends didn't either, the need to rebel. So coming back to, England at 17 or 18, Freshers Week, that was really hard. And at the time, growing up in Italy, I was going to the opera because it was very accessible for children. Under a certain age, you could go for free and things. So, and then coming back here and being 17 and saying, oh, I enjoy the opera. That an experience that really stands out is 2 days into me pursuing A-levels. When I was taking my A-levels, I went home and my mum said to me, so have you made, friends? Very much like that scene in Mean Girls. Have you made friends today? And I said, you know what, Mum, I actually have. I was talking to the boys. They were saying to me next summer they're going to take a trip together and they're going to Napa, thinking they were referring to the vineyard in California, not Ayia Napa, where the documentary Sun, Sea and Sex was filmed, which I only realised 4 years later when I was at university and somebody told me. So I wasn't cool. My nickname was Granger. I was an introvert. I was incredibly academic. I had come back to sit A-levels, so I was very driven and focused. So then pursuing Smart Girl Tribe, I wasn't this typical entrepreneurial extrovert. I was pursuing it all from a dorm room. I didn't have any contacts, very, very little money, not too much support from friends. So it was hard at the time, but because it was those experiences that made me realize I can only ever be myself. And I genuinely think the success of Smart Girl Tribe now, it's because of at the time I wanted to just build a business that was based on my own values. And to the point where then when we had our first office in London, I wrote a code of conduct. So words that if you were entering our space, you weren't allowed to use, and words that you're not allowed to use in our writing. So for example, hormonal is one of them, and that has circulated around different offices. The fact that I was able to say, no, I'm installing, PMS days. I'm not disguising them as, everyone can take PMS days. I'm not disguising them as personal days. I'm not referring to them as that. So because I really had to push, and all of that just came from me being me, if you like, when it then came to writing the book, I felt like I had enough experience where I really had to show up as my most authentic self, that then it was a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you've had so much experience of putting your own stamp on many different experiences that the book was probably just another one of those. Right. Yeah. Did you find it therapeutic writing? Because I hear this a lot from people, and when we're writing books with them and they say, God, it's like, I thought I'd healed something and then I'm writing and now I'm crying about it. And it's that sort of taking off the layers. How was that for you?
It was a very cathartic journey. I think a lot of it was very therapeutic. I loved it. It didn't mean that in parts it wasn't very difficult. And I did go to my mum a couple of times and I did say, do you think I should include this? And the answer was always yes. And I think now seeing the impact, every story, it was worthwhile, and I'm so happy I put each and every one in there, and I was myself, and I stand by my choices and everything I have included in there. So it was hard, but it was therapeutic. I think when you're writing a book, even though mine's part memoir, so many personal stories are in there that when I then finished it, it was almost like funny enough, like closing a chapter.
Yeah, I can completely relate. You feel like you've healed it, and you think, actually, I've done that justice now, and I can close that chapter and say, move on to the next one. So when you were obviously working with your literary agent, with your publisher, other people reading it, did you ever get any negative feedback on the book, or anything that you maybe weren't expecting to hear from people?
From my team when they were going through it?
Yeah, or the public.
Is there anything? To be honest, there hasn't been too much that's been... I think I have been surprised, but for other reasons. So I think when you set out on a journey, your why has to be really strong, the reason why you're pursuing something. And for me, at my penultimate event prior to COVID, I was invited to speak at the UK's largest careers and universities fair. And I had to talk for maybe 5 hours, perhaps even 6. And I had one coffee break in between. But I was speaking, and then afterwards, this mother approached me with her 22-year-old daughter. And she said to me, Scarlett, for the past 2 years, my daughter has told me every day she wants to take her own life. And today she has said this is the first day she hasn't wanted to because of something you have said. And I get goosebumps every time I tell this story. And I have stayed in touch with her, and she's well and thriving and living a really successful and fulfilling life. But knowing that, that's the story that I always remember when I think of my why, that I just remember, or I think of all of the girls and women who have ever approached me or send me DMs on social media or send me emails or letters. So I always think of them, and that was a surprise because I didn't think my work would have that kind of impact, but the impact it has had, that has been the biggest surprise, if I'm honest.
It's such a beautiful thing to hear, isn't it? And obviously it's heartbreaking that people are in those situations, but how beautiful that not only has that person experienced that, but the mum and the daughter came to tell you about it. Because I think imagine if you hadn't had that feedback, I remember very specific people at very specific times saying to me similar things, and you just think, how fortunate am I to have had that, the courage to actually share, to be able to inspire that person. And I think, isn't it so beautiful that your book will continue to inspire people for the foreseeable future, and I'm sure she's not the only person. That's the beautiful part. There is people reading it and hearing and learning all the time and just maybe not telling you. And that's the beautiful thing, is it's the ripple effect and the impact it has.
Yeah, completely. No, it has. That's been the biggest surprise, I think, because I still, I've just, last year I concluded my 1-year book tour. So that was incredible, hearing similar stories, and even now on social media, going through the DMs. So it is incredible.
You mentioned there about your book tour. I'm dying to find out about this because remember when we first spoke, you got the podcast up and running. It did so fantastically well. You get the book deal, you write the book in 4 months, it's out, and then you're offered a book tour. I mean, how did that happen?
I think, how did it happen? Funny, I just received a phone call. That's how it happened. I received a phone call, and I was told that a particular branch in Waterstones wanted me to go in and talk about the Smart Girls Handbook. And then it just happened very, very naturally. And then other branches heard, and I was building relationships and connections with different people. And I love books as well. I love books, and I love talking about reading, and I love talking about writing. It's not just my journey, but at the same time, I have personally felt that there are so many books out there that are written by reality TV stars who write a lot, about advice and things like this. And I just wrote a book being a very normal girl who just one day set up an online magazine that has done well. And I wanted, and that's in the book. And I say, I'm not a mentor. I'm not a guru. I'm not Superwoman. I am just a girl who decided to go for it. And so because of that, when it came to the option or the choice to book tour, it was, an absolutely yes. And it's, I've toured in a few countries now, and that's been incredible. And I think, in America, working with Harvard, that happened over there very organically. So yeah, I think it was just a very natural thing, but it was incredible. I'm looking forward to touring again already.
She's like, I'm just back, but I'm going again. I want to go. So Scarlett, obviously coming back down to what you shared right at the beginning, which is you always dreamt of being an author.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're sat here, you're an author, you've been on a 1-year book tour, wanting to do more, you're a speaker, you've got so many incredible things in the pipeline for you as well. Obviously, we can't share too many of them here, but have you ever had a moment where you've looked back and gone, is this really me? Is this really my life?
Yes, I do, because this actually happened. So I have had 2 crises in my life, if you like. The first was when I had just finished the book. And that was my one goal in life. That was the one thing I wanted. And I achieved it in my early 20s. That was that was hard afterwards. Yes, of course, I loved the book tour. But just before going on the book tour, I said to my mum, and I genuinely meant this, I said, what do you do when your dream has come true? Because I was almost pushed into a crisis, because it was very much, what now? Because that was the one thing that I had wanted, and then I had achieved it. So that was the first crisis. The second crisis happened, I think it was a couple of years ago. So when I moved to London, so many different things were happening in my life. So many dreams were coming true. And I just thought in that time, and I've recorded a few podcast episodes on this, because I've said, everything I ever wanted, everything I had manifested had come true. I'm living the life that I have always wanted. And in a way, it was, okay, time to evolve again. Time to go after something new, time to go after a new challenge. So I have had a couple of moments where it has been, oh my gosh, I genuinely, and I mean this sincerely, I can't believe this has almost happened to me, because I very much started, I didn't have any money. I was known as Granger. I had very, very few friends. I had struggled throughout when I was sitting my A-levels, because all of the reasons why I was celebrated in Italy were the reasons that people made fun of me almost in England. And that was hard to navigate at the time. And now I'm through it. I can look back, obviously, with a different kind of head, but I would say no, there have definitely been moments when I look back now and I think, oh my gosh. But to be honest, my parents have always said to me, your best days are ahead of you and you have to live like that. So I do. I look forward rather than look back. And I'm very grateful for all of the blessings and opportunities. But equally, I think it's very important, because I never did this, is look back and realize the sacrifice it took and the hustle it took, because that's something I never did. And I've started trying to do that a lot more.
It's so powerful, isn't it? Because I think so many of us are just constantly on the train, moving forward, looking forward. And actually, if we forget to acknowledge where we are or what we've achieved, it's so easy to just keep going and then be lost at the end. I'm curious, Scarlett, obviously, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like you've gone from strength to strength. Have there been any challenges in amongst that you've had to face that maybe you weren't expecting on the journey?
No, it's always been just like rose tinted and wonderful and perfect. No, of course, there have been so many challenges, so many difficulties, so many obstacles. And as I say to somebody, when you see somebody standing on a mountaintop of success, that mountain is actually made up of failures and obstacles, and they've been, thrown down. And even very personal things that for some would be quite small, I guess, my best friend saying to me that we couldn't be best friends anymore. That was really heartbreaking. That took a long time to get over and to work through. So I would say, no, absolutely. There have been lots of challenges, lots of difficulties. I mean, even at the time I had this website set up, I had to teach myself to code. because I couldn't pay somebody to be coding my website. So there would be, Christmas holidays where I'd be learning to code, and I Googled everything and I looked everything up. So that in itself was a challenge, and it was at the time. And looking back, I still can't believe that I did that for so long, because I did that all throughout university when I was pursuing it, until it started, generating money and things like this. So no, there have definitely been challenges.
What would you say happened, or was there ever a point at which you suddenly thought Smart Girl Tribe is actually not a hobby and it's actually a legitimate business?
Was there a moment? I think when I went to New York, that changed, because I was leaving, to a degree, everything I had ever known. And I was leaving a stable job with an income and a promotion that I had been offered. And it had only been 3 weeks. And saying to people, oh, I've got all of this, but I'm miserable. So I'm now going to go and pursue this online magazine that I have, on a different continent. I can't say people were naturally supportive. So it was probably in that moment when you have to decide, you have to be very purposeful and be very intentional. And I think for me personally, it's very similar to driving. When you're driving, every action you take is very intentional. When you're launching a business and you're pursuing that business, even, after so many years, you have to be just as intentional. You have to decide success on purpose, and you have to root for yourself, and you have to have faith in yourself. Because as I say to so many of my team members, if you don't, nobody else will. Because nobody else will have cause to. You have to. And when I started, I really genuinely, being a good girl, thought, I've got to be modest. I've got to be humble. Don't talk about Smart Girl Tribe. That's how you lost your best friend. So I didn't. For the first couple of years, I didn't talk about Smart Girl Tribe. And then it was only when I was actually at a party and someone was introducing me to somebody else. And they turned to this person. They said, oh, this is Scarlett. And she has this thing. It's kind of like a blog, I think. And rather than think, oh my gosh, you don't know what I do, it was more, this is a reflection on me, because I haven't really shared it. I'm not talking about it. And that was doing myself and all of the potential Smart Girl Tribe readers and listeners a disservice. And then I became an ambassador for the NSPCC quite shortly afterwards, after that scenario, and I was pushing, for more opportunities, and I was advocating for myself. And then I remember afterwards thinking, as I, because I had to carry out so many workshops and things, and one of them was very intimate, and then there was a big one, and I thought, all of their lives that have been impacted potentially by Smart Girl Tribe, that wouldn't have happened if I had stayed so modest and so humble. There is absolutely a gracious way to go about business, and I have always said grace is my primary value, and my best, most authentic self for me is my most gracious and graceful self. However, you also have to be your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, definitely. Because as you say, if we're not our biggest cheerleaders, then no one will be. No. Yeah. And I think that's one thing I always find fascinating about you, Scarlett, because you always come across very confident and assertive as well. Have you ever had moments of imposter syndrome or anything coming over you that sort of makes you think, oh God, am I really that person that's written that book or on that podcast or on that radio show?
When I had these 2 crises, then I thought, is this really my life? Especially the most recent one, which was only a couple of years ago. I thought, is this really my life? I'd wanted this for so long, and now it has all come true, and still at a young age. However, I remember reading, I think maybe I was reading or I was listening, but there was an interview, and an entrepreneur was saying that she had interviewed Martha Stewart, and she had said, so Martha, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And Martha Stewart turned around and she said, no. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's the attitude that we all need, especially as women. We need to start pursuing our goals and thinking, you know what, I'm not going to listen to that inner critic. I'm not going to listen to that voice. One thing I have done that has hugely helped, because that's where it comes down to, that it's your inner mean girl, or inner bad boy talking to you, is one thing I have done that's really helped me is I have named my inner mean girl, and I have named her Sheila. So no offense to any Sheilas out there, but whenever I hear that voice, or, you know, saying to myself, or if I'm saying to myself, I'm not talented enough or experienced enough, or I'm not worthy enough, or I'm not deserving of this opportunity, I literally imagine closing the door on Sheila and saying, shut up, Sheila, no one needs you today.
I love that.
So because that's a really strong way to detach yourself from that inner voice, and realizing that actually that inner voice, you can choose for it to have nothing to do with you. I think that's exceptionally important. And also another thing that helps is asking yourself, how would I talk to my best friend? You know, if my best friend was coming to me and if she were to say, you know, oh, I've written this book, I don't think it's that good, or, you know, I don't think I'm worthy of a book tour, what would you say to her? You would absolutely, you'd be her cheerleader, you'd advocate for her, you'd support her, and you'd say, no, come on, you've got this. But we don't talk to ourselves like that, and we need to. So I'd say those are the two key things that have helped me in moments where I have thought, okay, I feel like an imposter in this situation. I don't feel like I'm necessarily worthy or deserving of this opportunity.
Yeah, I love those suggestions. I think imposter syndrome is something that many of us do experience, but it's also just being aware that it's normal and that there are ways of handling it, right? Worst thing we can do is just absorb it and listen to it and let it take over, because it will stop us in our future opportunities. So Scarlett, we've almost out of time already. It's absolutely flown by, but thank you for sharing so openly what you've experienced, especially with Smart Girl Tribe, the Smart Girls Handbook, and the book tour and everything else. I'm curious, Scarlett, what's next for you now that you've ticked off quite a few things on the bucket list?
What's next for me? A few things. I will say global events. So I would say keep an eye out on our social media channels for those. I'm writing, if that gives something away, and a couple of other things in the pipeline.
Could we possibly hear some news of a second book coming out, perhaps?
Maybe.
We'll take that.
Maybe.
I love that. Oh, fantastic. Well, I think if anything is shown by your first book and the success that's come from that, I'm sure many of us will be dying for the second book. So Scarlett, thank you for being here. It's been so great to have you. Now, we have one final question that we ask all of our guests, which I know you know because you've been a great listener of the show. So who do you know that has an inspiring story that you think we should have on the show next?
I would say my friend Marin Tanguy, and I'm just going to leave it at that, but she is the director of, and the founder actually, of MT Art Agency, and also the author of Visual Detox, and she's also a TED Talk speaker.
Oh, fantastic. Well, yeah, let's make it happen. I just absolutely love interviewing authors. So any speakers and authors, would absolutely love that. So thank you so much, Scarlett. As I said, it's been great to have you on the show, and I'm so glad we finally made this interview happen.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Well, I hope you have enjoyed that interview as much as I have, and I hope you took loads of notes and golden nuggets from that. Now, if you haven't already, if you are watching on our YouTube channel, make sure that you share in the comments what was being the biggest takeaway that you've taken from Scarlett's interview. Maybe you're in the middle of writing your first book, or you want to write a book and you've got a few ideas now from what Scarlett has shared about her writing journey. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple or anywhere else you get your podcasts, make sure you subscribe for more so you don't miss our next inspiring guest. I'll see you next week.